Chapter 3. Roman Theatre. According to legend, Rome was founded around 750 BC. Its history spanned centuries and different models of government. Through war and diplomacy, Rome became a republic and then an empire. Eventually it split into the Western, or Occidental, and the Eastern, or Oriental empires. This led to the formation of the Latin and Byzantine Christian traditions. Even after the fall of Rome, the idea of the empire lived on and was later revived in the formation of the Holy Roman Empire in medieval times. Many developments in political philosophy, government, and especially in the spread of early Christianity, make this period a strong influence on our lives today. The theatre of ancient Rome was influenced greatly by classic Greek theatre and popular entertainment. It is known that the Romans preferred comedy. Tragedy was not highly regarded. Several cultural threads are interwoven to produce the theatre of early Rome. Its first source was the Etruscan culture, which placed great emphasis on religious festivals. Worship of the gods included chariot racing, competitive sports and fighting. Acting, singing, dancing, music, acrobatics and juggling were also part of the festival activities. Etruscan rulers were responsible for establishing the Ludi Romani, where Greek drama was subsequently presented. Popular entertainments were precursors of Roman theatre. These include comic improvisations performed during Etruscan marriage ceremonies. Two comedic forms from the south also played a role in this. Masked mime performances and Atellan farce were both brought to Italy through contact with Greek colonies in Syracuse. The most important Greek influence, however, was new comedy. The two most widely renowned Roman playwrights of comedy are Plauchus and Terence. Plauchus' plays depicted comic situations with broad characters and physical stunts. They were a combination of native Italian farce mixed with characters and plots of Hellenistic new comedy. A good portion of the dialogue might have been accompanied by music. Terence's plays were more subtle and concentrated on character development and eloquent speech. A good way to imagine the differences between these two types of comedy would be to compare South Park with Frasier. Terence had an association with high society that was reflected in his comedy. Though his plays were admired by educated friends, the majority of theatre-goers preferred more lively comedy such as that of Plauchus. Roman tragedy was not as popular with audiences, but there are notable works. The chief Roman tragic playwright was Seneca, a follower of Stoicism, but also known as an Epicurean. His personal life. On the surface, his tragedies appear to be very similar to their Greek counterparts, but he staged violent acts that would have happened offstage in a Greek play. Senecan tragedy also differed by doing away with the tragic flaw. Instead, Senecan heroes are driven by an overwhelming emotion such as an obsession for revenge, seething rage or lust. Supernatural figures such as ghosts and witches appear in the dramatic action. The main characters are consumed by one motive and can appear to be melodramatic by today's standards. The elements that Seneca introduced can be found in later periods, most notably in the works of William Shakespeare. Horace was another figure of note. He was a critic of dramatic literature, especially of Aristotle, and became the best-known writer of dramatic theory in the Roman period. Horace stressed rules, such as the 5-act structure and the strict separation of comedy and tragedy. Only 3 speaking characters were to appear at any time. The chorus should be used to set a high moral tone and give good counsel. The purpose of theatre should be to profit and please by both entertaining and educating. Acts of extreme fantasy or moral offense should be kept off the stage, and extremities of emotion should be curtailed in favor of a more truthful realism. Acting companies would have formed around a head actor manager who took care of contracts and expenses. Some actors may have reached celebrity status, having become well known for specializing in a certain stock character. Theatre spaces were largely temporary, erected for festivals only, but they would have been elaborate and expensive. Permanent theatre structures were discouraged because it was thought they would pose a threat to public morality. In later years, as the use of bread and circuses became apparent to Rome's leaders, permanent amphitheatres were built to make theatre and popular entertainment available to a larger number of people. The largest and most imposing was the Colosseum. A typical Roman theatre structure was very similar to the Greek amphitheatre, with seating and orchestra in a semicircle, a raised stage and a scene building behind. The orchestra was not used for performance. Instead it became the seating area for officials and esteemed audiencemen. The scene building featured storage space for scenery and costumes, 3 to 5 doorways for entrances and an elaborate facade of statuary and carved details. Curtains were used to conceal scenery changes and the entrance of actors. A painted backdrop would also be used to cover the front of the scene house when required. Scenic elements of Roman theatre were written extensively by Vitruvius and were later rediscovered by the artists of the Italian Renaissance. Roman amphitheatres can still be seen today in diverse locations all around the Mediterranean. Because the works of Plautus and Terence were based on Greek New Comedy, and Seneca is not considered to be an outstanding example of tragedy, Romans are not seen to be originators of great theatre. They did, however, develop a number of popular entertainments, some adopted from Greek sources, that appealed to all levels of society with few educational, financial or linguistic barriers. These correspond to modern circus, rodeo, racing and sporting events. Sport-like entertainment such as equestrian performances, gladiatorial combat, gymnastic and even public execution were all featured for public viewing. Traditional Roman performances of farce and mime revolving around comedic and sexual exploits became more popular as Rome became an empire. Pantomime was also developed by the Romans, which would have been similar to a modern story ballet, featuring a principal player to portray a mythological or comedic story while the chorus spoke or sang the narrative. In the final years of the Roman Empire, the capital city was moved to Constantinople, modern Istanbul. There was strife between the Western and Eastern empires. Christianity became the state religion, which forbade pagan practices and immoral displays of execution or blood sport. Sexual innuendo and satirical attacks on authority were also condemned, resulting in several edicts against theatre and the people who made it. As late as the 17th century, the French playwright Molière was refused a church burial because of his life in the theatre. As Roman civic centres declined in their power, they were invaded by northern settlers. The amphitheatres became places of public gathering for markets and political speeches. The dispersal of governmental, educational and cultural resources caused many historians to call the period that followed the Dark Ages. But some revisionists believe this to be too negative. The empire had been disintegrating for many years and may have simply collapsed under its own course of action. The Middle Ages that followed may have been the next step in the development of the modern world rather than being a setback as some have portrayed it to be. This concludes the review for Chapter 3. Thank you for listening and goodbye for now.